Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about my thoughts on the film Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. This was a movie that I was somewhat hyped for, being a fan of big time, sort of eye candy laden sci fi action adventure films and things like that. I loved one of the former works of the director of this piece, Luc Besson, The Fifth Element, of course. One of my favorite movies. I just love the visual design and the creature effects and everything like that. And this movie definitely had that going on and then some. It was a world, a universe unto itself. And it was pretty spectacular visually from beginning to end. And but I kind of found it boring. It did not live up to the hype that I had built up for myself. Going all the way back to when they had the, as part of the advertising, you could get customizable previews. You would write like a blurb on a YouTube channel that they had exclusively for this purpose, and they would send you a link to, the trailer for the film with your little write up, no matter what it was, whether it was positive, negative, gibberish, And I had made one and, thought it was awesome. And that drew me in, and I loved, everything that we were seeing visually. I didn't know anything about the story, the origin material, or anything like that, and still to this day I don't. I kept away from it specifically so I could go in and watch the movie as its own thing. And it just, it's a lot longer than it needs to be. I think out of everything from beginning to end, it wasn't until like maybe the first 5 minutes of the film drew me in, and I'm like, all right, I am ready. I'm ready to check this out. We're in an alien environment. We are getting used to this sort of Na'vi-esque indigenous species that comes under threat because there's a war looming up above, their planet, and all of these vessels are crashing down, and it becomes apocalyptic. This species is wiped out, with the exception of a small band of survivors because they happen to find one of these crashed ships, and they hide in it at the last second. And I'm not going to spoil the whole story for you in case you're curious and you want to go check out the film. But suffice to say, this small band survives, and that's something that becomes integral to the plot. Then we are introduced to our main two characters, Valerian and Laureline, I think is how they said it. Actors Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne, I think is how her name is pronounced. Hope it is. DeHaan being maybe not the best actor in the world, definitely not an action hero, and definitely not anything that had me like gravitating toward him or particularly liking him. I didn't really like the dynamic that was immediately introduced, where he's hitting on his partner. He's like a merc or a soldier or something, and she's, Laureline, or Cara Delevingne, the actress, is his pseudo partner, and he's hitting on her and talking about, he's like supposed to be like this Captain Kirk-esque, womanizer. He has so many girlfriends he's had, and it's all a playlist or whatever, and she doesn't want to be another rung on his belt. And they were trying to play the Han and Leia dynamic, and it just wasn't working because he may be D-Han, but he ain't Han. He took the Han out of it. I guess that's a pretty telltale of his name, Dane DeHaan. They de-Hanned his character, so you don't like him. He's not like a scoundrel. He's not like straight-laced like a Luke Skywalker. He's not longing for anything more, anything grander other than her, And you get like none of that, none of the sense of any romance or rapport between them, maybe until like beyond the 3/4 mark. Like there's only a half an hour left to the film. And that's what I was going to say. What I was going to build up to say is like the first 5-10 minutes-ish that we are introduced to this alien culture was mesmerizing. As soon as that ends abruptly, and we're introduced to the main characters we're going to follow throughout the rest of the film, Valerian and Laureline, it just got boring. things were happening. This happened, then that happened, then this action, then that action, then they go on a mission and it goes wrong, and like just things are happening that you're not invested in, you just don't care about. And this continues for the next hour and a half. It wasn't until the minute 44 mark that suddenly the aliens that were in the opening returned to the story, and I was then reinvested. I was then drawn back into it. Everything else it just did nothing for me. I was kind of forcing myself to get through it. There was no personality. There were no character moments like Luke on Tatooine looking up at the horizon at the dual suns of that planet and longing for something, wishing and hoping to be rescued from this mundane life that he's surrounded by, There was none of that. There was no Han Solo-esque, a quip here and a line there, and you can see he's a scoundrel, but you kind of like him because he's going to go along with the, doing the right thing. And there was nothing. There was no personality. There was never any moment that took a beat, drew you in, let you get to know these characters, not until after the minute 44 mark. Then you start to see the humanitarian side of them. Then you start to see the compassionate side of them. Then you start to see the rapport between them when they are effectively reunited. It's a grand mystery through the movie that you don't care. I didn't know what the hell was going on for the majority of it until finally these aliens come back and we find out why they came back, what they have to do with the plot, how integral they are. And the two main characters were kind of in the limelight of that, cast in the shadow of that. And then they were workable as characters. It's such a thorough shame. Cara Delevingne, she's a good enough actress, whereas Dehan, I could take or leave entirely with what we'll call a performance. He kind of sounded like a young Stallone, like he had marbles in his mouth when he's delivering his lines. At least Delevingne, she was workable, but they didn't give her anything resoundingly emotional or captivating to do. She kicked some ass, but they didn't give her anything worthy of acting, being emotional, being something you were drawn to, other than her very attractive looks, until the movie's almost over, until there's only half an hour left. If you took that first 5 or so minutes of seeing this alien culture, maybe had a couple of short scenes in between to get to know these characters, and then you kept the end cap from the minute 44 mark on. I think there was like 35 minutes left of the movie at that point. You could have cut out half the movie and this would have been a pretty effective story, a pretty engaging story with momentum, and build a connection with the characters as a viewer. Build a connection that is believable between them both, that, you can sense a rapport between them that you buy, but then also you connect to the characters. I got nothing from this movie other than, okay, this happens, and that happens, and this is happening, and this is happening, and there's a chase, and there's, bad guys, and blah, 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 blah. Action, 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 action. And debate. And it was just kind of ridiculous. But not... I called back on Fifth Element. I compared this movie saying that it was trying to be Star Wars meets Fifth Element. But in all the worst ways for the most part. Even the Fifth Element had personality. You got to know Bruce Willis's character. He's kind of a downtrodden taxi driver. The whole weight of the world is on him. He's just fed up with everything. And sort of a typical action hero generic character, but there was personality injected with the Rudy Rod character and with Mila Jovovich's, Lilu and everything like that. And there was something hanging in the balance. And you're never sure what the hell, if there even is anything hanging in the balance in this movie, until the minute 44 mark, when everything comes to a head and you realize what's been going on. Everything else in between has nothing to do with anything almost. They're just beats to get you from point A to point B, and those beats are going a mile a minute, and there's so much action going on, and you don't care. And I feel completely weird saying that because I'm the last person in the world who usually says that about anything. It's the Star Wars prequels effect, where I can watch and enjoy those movies because I'm entranced by the world, the Jedi and the Sith and what's going on, and how this is all a precursor building up to Anakin Skywalker's becoming Darth Vader and everything like that. It's a universe I'm familiar with, and because of that, it's an extension of that I can put myself into it. I can plug into it and enjoy it. Here I have no bearing for what in the hell's going on. The main characters are bland and flaccid, and there's no connectivity to them. There's just action, action, action. I mean, short of just acrobatic lightsaber battles, you're not tuned into anything. You know, just like the Star Wars prequels. The most common denominator complaint I hear about those movies. All of those complaints I've ever heard about those movies that I don't necessarily agree with, I put them all on this one. Because there was nothing to gravitate toward, to grapple onto, to be sucked in by, other than the visuals. The visuals had a whole heap and ton of personality, but the characters didn't. You know, the awe and wonder of this alien culture, this Na'vi-esque from the movie Avatar sort of society that is wiped to extinction seemingly at the start, they were entrancing, majestic. You know, immediately, just because of the awe and the splendor of it all, I was drawn in. I was somewhat reminded of, you know, anytime I've started up a Final Fantasy game or something like that. You know, letting it wash over me and just being so enraptured by the visuals and the style, and I wanted to know more about these aliens and everything. And then it abruptly cuts off, and we're introduced to the two dullest mercs, mercenaries, soldiers, whatever they are, that are sort of playfully flirting, but it's just like they're doing a line read. At least Elavine, you know, it's like I said, it's no fault of her own because she is an established actress. And when it counted, she came to bear in this film. But they gave her like nothing. You know, they gave her a walking plank in the character Valerian to bound off of, and there was no charm, there was no wit, there was no rapport, no believability for my part. And so this, again, just goes on and on and on till about the minute 44 mark, when all of a sudden we are reintroduced to that awe and that splendor that opened the movie with this alien species, this indigenous culture, and we find out what they've been up to. We find out why they're integral to the plot. And our pseudo-heroes, our main two heroes, they got to make a decision. Are they going to help them? Are they going to ignore them? Are they going to follow duty? Are they going to follow their hearts? And that's when everything started to actually gel and come together. And I was like, okay, now it's a movie. You know, it's 35 minutes left to go out of a, you know, over 2-hour movie. I don't remember what the exact runtime is, but it's only a half an hour left. And now I'm enjoying it. And then even then, it still petered out a little bit. Whenever they put too much focus on Dehan and his digging on, you know, Delvine's Laureline character, it was just like, oh. I literally, let me put it to you in the grand scope of this. I literally had 3 moments where I checked the timestamp and I'm like, oh my God, there's still so much more of this movie to go. I was grateful then, though, at the minute 44 mark when things picked up, that I didn't shut it off. But then even the ending is so flaccid. It's so meaningless. You know, it calls directly back to the so-called rapport connectivity that you never get. You almost never get throughout the entirety of the movie between, you know, Dehan's Valerian and Delavine's Laureline. And the ending, you know, you're supposed to be like, oh, that's awesome, you know, yeah. And it's more like, oh, thank God, it's over, thank God. And it sucks that is the case. It sucks that that's the reaction to it, because I wanted to love it. I wanted it to be like The Fifth Element. This movie could have been maybe an hour and 25 minutes, stretching it, working out a little more depth of character. They stopped the movie midway through to have a pseudo striptease by I can't even remember the singer's name off the top of my head. Like I don't never followed her. I don't care. Rihanna, I think. And when I say striptease, I don't mean stripping out of clothes. I mean she's like a shapeshifter, and she's shifting from one costume, one cosplay to another throughout this dance. Ethan Hawke, by the way, surprisingly just showed up, and he's playing like a numbnut in that sequence, playing the piano or whatever. And I don't know what they were trying to capture with this movie, but it missed the mark. And that sucks, because it could have been just amazing. If I could find like an edit or editing software, and I'll edit up my own version, you know, like just streamline it down to like a little more than an hour, and this would be miraculous. It would be spectacular. It would be just gangbusters. But so much of it just didn't need to be there. So much of it was anything but. It's such a letdown. Such a letdown. I had the same thing with Pixels a long time ago when that came out. I was so stoked. I'm like, this is going to be like a Ghostbusters for the modern age, playing on video games. And that movie was just like the worst thing I've ever sat through in a while. This wasn't the worst thing. So much of it was not good. But at least it wasn't, you know, a hobo coming up and after you handing him $20, you know, to help him get a meal, he vomits it up on your shoes, bad as Pixels was. But yeah, it just... This movie could have been so much better. It's so disappointing. It's so frustrating that it wasn't what I hoped it was going to be. And, you know, sometimes my mind will change. This is just, you know, me spouting off after initially watching it for the first time. And, you know, kind of like as of the time of this recording, there are two shows that are on right now, Star Trek Discovery and The Orville, which is very Star Trek-like, both of which I've been enjoying. But there have been times when I really did not enjoy something. Either one of them did. And I ranted about it in my, you know, doing video discussions along these lines. And then subsequently I'd go back and I'd watch them after some time has passed, and I found that my reaction was much more dialed back, and I could get much more attuned to it, and I had less of a problem watching it. So I'm hoping that is the case with Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I'm hoping upon subsequent viewings. You know, I went through this with the original Blade Runner. It took me a long time to wrap my mind around it and find a way to find it workably entertaining along my taste, you know, line of tastes. And I'm hoping, Valerian, that's the case with this movie. First impressions, my initial reaction to it is, holy hell, so much of it was boring and pointless. And there was no rapport. There was no flair. There was no connectivity to the characters. There was not enough emphasis on heart and emotion and actual things that were compelling and engrossing. Most of it was just a gross abnormality of action scene after action scene after action scene. The common complaint you hear about the Transformers movies, and most of the time I enjoy them for what they are as well. This one just didn't really do it for me upon my first watching it. And so I thought I'd talk about that with you guys and find out from you if you've seen Valerian and the City of the Thousand Planets. If you've seen it, did you enjoy it? Did you love it? Was it the best thing you've ever seen since sliced bread, you know, cinnamon toast or something, whatever you think is the best thing ever? And, or did you find it long-winded, boring, much longer than it needed to be, not a hell of a lot of personality? All of the things that I'm talking about is how I felt about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know that in the comments below. We can always have a great, respectable conversation about movies and anime and all kinds of different things. Whatever floats our boats. And, yeah. Otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, I'll catch you all later. Peace.